Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And normally she doesn't sit in on Dungeons & Dragons videos, but this one is so ridiculous that she decided she wanted to sit in on it. This is the senior game designer for D&D. This is Jason Tondro, and he has been clipped basically saying that D&D was created by a bunch of white dudes and it was problematic, and now WotC will do better with inclusivity. This is during the 50th anniversary celebration of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. So that's why I'm here. I'm just like, wait, they literally got up there and said that it's problematic because it was created by white dudes while they celebrate 50 years of the company that they're just shitting on the founders for.
Yeah, we know that this is how Wizards of the Coast feels. We know this is how a lot of people in the tabletop scene feel about it. We know that Gary Gygax, if they could detach him completely from Dungeons and Dragons, they would do it in a heartbeat. They would do it in a heartbeat. When the issue came up with Ernie Gygax saying the things on the one podcast that got him in trouble, and he didn't really say much. He just was kind of like, what's with all the gender ideology and tabletop games? It wasn't much, but that got him in trouble. And the people associated with Gen Con, which was started by Gary Gygax, couldn't even pronounce his name.
I know.
Like, what the hell? You know? And
it's getting ridiculous. Meanwhile, they keep having layoffs, but yes, do go on.
Yeah. This is like, I mean, come on, guys, seriously. So we're gonna talk about this. Just D&D is a skin suit. It's the corpse of the game that TSR created that was sold to Wizards years ago, and there's not much left of it.
And meanwhile, Hasbro's still run by a white dude.
It is. A big cock.
Yeah.
Chris Cox. Yes. He wants to turn it into a video game company. So they're probably, you know what they're probably going to do? They're probably going to use this as another reason to be like, oh, well, because of D&D's problematic history, we've decided to just
hire Sweet Baby Inc.
Yeah, hire Sweet Baby. Oh my God. This is, yeah. They have actually. Sweet Baby Inc. apparently has consulted for Wizards of the Coast before.
Oh, shocker!
Shockingly,
I never would have guessed that.
Never would have guessed.
Were they the ones that said you can't be a witch anymore?
Maybe, because we've gone through this before, that there are so many things that keep coming up at Wizards of the Coast with Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Certain terms you can't use anymore.
They're the ones who said orcs are black people?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. So let's talk about this. Have to give a hat tip to Bounding in the Comics that put this together, and we're going to go out to his interview and react to it because it's so ridiculous. To be ashamed of the project you're working on, to be ashamed of the product that has made your career, to be ashamed of the creator of that product. I mean, we've seen this time and time again with Disney. I mean, they're constantly kind of trying to minimize Walt Disney. We've seen it with Tolkien, and now D&D is problematic. If you hate it so much, leave.
But the kicker was it was never exclusionary.
No, it never was.
It's exclusionary now. I would argue it's more exclusionary now than it's ever been.
Yeah, I think so. Tabletop is a very gate-kept hobby now, which is why I've been doing so many videos on it lately, because, you know, I attempted to get back into tabletop with the kids a few years ago, and I was shocked at what the scene had become. And no, that's not me being like, oh my God, you were just shocked that there are different kinds of people other than white men. I'm like, no, I was shocked at how gate-kept and weird and bullying the scene has become. Like,
you're not allowed to stay political. They try. They bully them too.
Yeah, we saw Troll Lord games. They were basically like, hey, we leave the politics at the door. We just want to talk about the game and the game mechanics. And they're like, that's a political statement. You need to be attacked for that. We saw Backer Kit. Backer Kit got all kinds of pushback because they announced some of the people, the game developers that were going to be at their online summit. And there weren't enough diverse people, and they got attacked for it, even though there were diverse people. But the headliners were people that have been in the industry for a long time. And I hate to break it to you. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but historically, yeah, a lot of the early game developers were white dudes. Does that mean that it's always going to be that way or should always stay away? No, that's not saying that those were the preferred people that we want to play games. No, like we said, it's always been the table has always been welcoming to all kinds of people playing. I don't remember this ever being an issue. I don't remember it ever coming up. Even when I was living in California and we had very diverse groups of people at the gaming table, I never remember this coming up that like, well, D&D is just too white. It's just too male.
Because it's a current year narrative that they keep trying to run with. It's this their own gatekeeping is what it is. It's just them trying to gatekeep it.
It's basically, yes.
And the white guy being afraid he's going to get canceled.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. I mean, that's like I saw some of the stuff going down with, and I think I think Matt Mercer's actually a pretty nice guy. We met him before. He was a pretty nice guy, but I think a lot of the virtue signaling that is going on, especially by other white dudes, is people trying to keep their jobs. They're like, I better say these things because I know that they would get rid of me in a heartbeat to replace me with a younger, more female model. So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
Again, this is coming from Bounding in the Comics. Dungeons and Dragons senior game designer disavows how series was made by white dudes. Boasts that much of the original material would never pass our inclusivity reviews today.
And then that's why no one's buying your shit and you're laying people off.
Yeah, I think these things are kind of related because what you forget, right? And we're seeing this with comics too. The audience that your marketing people, that your PR people want, and the audience that actually exists, sometimes they're two different things. You can want to bring more people to gaming and you can chase after certain demographics and certain audiences, but a lot of times, unfortunately, it's come at the expense of throwing the old audience away. And we saw this in comics too. Like you can say, hey, let's open things up a little bit more to, appeal to different groups of people. But then it's always saddled with, oh yeah, because it's just always been too white.
Well, the problem is,
it's like, wait, what? You could have just done the first part, not said the other part.
That's it. The problem is like they're so busy trying to chase this new audience that they're being stupid. Like all the people like I got rid of like witches or whatever. You're not allowed to say that or whatever. And I'm like, so for the 10 people that you made happy with that, you just ticked off a bunch of people, other people, including those who identify as that. So that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like you want to keep the audience you have. You'd want to build upon that, but you'd want to be inclusive, not exclusionary. And you keep going the route of being exclusionary and then patting yourself on the back as your sales and stuff dwindle to the place you have to lay off people.
Yeah, and they're saying this is just a couple of weeks ago that Hasbro lost over $1 billion in Q4. We covered that, and they said that WotC revenue is going to decline in 2024. Can't imagine why. There have been a lot of negative stories about Magic the Gathering, a lot of people noping out of the hobby after years, and same with Dungeons and Dragons. But they keep going back to Baldur's Gate, and I'm like, you barely had anything to do with that. That was Larian Studios.
The ones that did. They fired a lot of people that were working on the Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, you got rid of the people that actually started that ball rolling, and apparently you kept this guy who has a very vocal disdain for the white dudes that made D&D. So yeah, in delivering what is perhaps one of the most self-aggrandizing virtue signals in recent history. I don't know. We've seen lots of guys from Wizards saying stupid shit like this. Current Dungeons and Dragons senior game designer Jason Tondro has taken to proudly touting the fact that much of the series' original materials, which he condescendingly writes off thanks to having been made by white dudes, would never pass our inclusivity reviews.
Well, how did he pass the inclusivity reviews? Because last time I checked, he's white and male. That's 2 strikes against you, buddy.
So yeah, this is coming from the making of the original Dungeons and Dragons, 1970 to 77.
He should very much step down and let a diverse person have his position. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, why are you still there? Just quit.
You need to step down because you are white and male, and you need to make sure that there is more diversity. As someone who's the head designer on this project, that's the only right thing to do.
That is why is it that these people are always willing to throw? It's always white. Did you notice a pattern here? It's either white women or white men willing to throw shade like, oh, well, all those other white men are bad. Unlike me, I'm a progressive current year white male. I'm not one of the bad ones. I'm one of the good ones. Honest. Please keep me on payroll. Yeah, because people would call for him to get gone. So this is in like an official. Yes, this is the official Dungeons and Dragons channel.
50 years.
50 years. They're celebrating D&D by throwing the original creators under the bus. Like, what the fuck? Like, if you were only sort of paying attention what went down with Ernie Gygax, and we won't talk about new TSR. That was a whole nother freaking ball of wax, right? But just Ernie Gygax and how quickly the loving tabletop gaming community rallied around him to pick him up and hoist them over their heads so they could throw him out a damn window. Mm-hmm. Like, they really could not wait to get their hands on a Gygax. Like, it was so disgusting. And that for me, I'm
surprised that isn't one of the villains in the game. It's a Gygax, right?
Gygax. Well, they have the one, the character it's supposed to, it's Thako the Clown, and they're making fun of old heads that like second edition D&D. And I'm like, come on. Not to be confused with Thako the Clown. They're the newer players.
Yeah, apparently.
So let's watch this again. Hat tip to Bounding in the Comics for putting it on our radar. I cannot believe that this is on an official D&D channel. Like, what the hell?
And it felt like I was the right person to be making this, you know.
Okay.
And it's important that this is a historical document. So there are things, it was a different time. So we've had an inclusivity review of all these materials.
Multiple. So let's.
Oh my God. Okay. So yeah, Sweet Baby Inc. probably involved in this. It wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, they've really been doubling down on this inclusivity, sensitivity reader bullshit at WotC.
Let's take a step back here. Let's clarify. There are materials in original Dungeons & Dragons that would never pass our inclusivity reviews today.
Okay.
Okay, so and?
Well, yeah, and. I mean, again, we're talking about stuff that was created 40, 50 years ago. I mean, like, yeah. But you don't have to keep... I guess my thing is, like, you don't have to keep calling attention to it and being like, oh my God, that old stuff? Yeah, it's old. And it's like you don't have to keep throwing these creators under the bus.
And a lot of it is, some of it you can understand. Like, okay, these are a bunch of war gamers, and they're using armies from history. And so when they create a warrior class for Dungeons and Dragons, they call it the fighting man, right?
Yes.
Because that's what they were used to.
But they call mankind.
They were all white.
But mankind is just a general.
I know, right? They were all white dudes.
Lake Geneva and the Twin Cities. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Like, there's a lot of material.
He can't say the tip. That's misogynistic. I'm offended.
Oh
he should be fired.
It would not pass our inclusivity reviews today.
Well, he doesn't pass my inclusivity review because he said tip. And I'm offended.
Now, the irony in all this is this looks exactly like the kind of guy that would have probably worked for TSR.
Well, we couldn't change it. It's history.
Okay, I will give him props for that at least they're like, well, we can't change it. But what they do is they slap a content warning on it and they minimize it and they try to like forget that Gary Gygax exists.
Well, so you need a content warning because there are a warrior class of dudes who are white.
Yeah, among other things. I mean, look, some of the stuff that they did back in the day, yeah, it definitely wouldn't fly current year, but I think they've overcorrected. I think they've compensated. Now it's the point where they pulled all the teeth out of D&D. Like, it's such a ridiculous version of the game.
Then you can suck and not bite.
What we can do is acknowledge it and show how far we've come. Because that's not D&D anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. And look at this guy. God, I just want to... God, that guy.
He looks like he sucks. I'm just saying.
No, but the reality...
The fact that teeth are pulled out makes him happy.
Oh, God. The reality is no, it's not D&D anymore. And that's why I was so shocked when I came back into it after being lapsed. It was like, what the hell is this game and where did Dungeons and Dragons go? Like, you're using the trademark, but this isn't the same game. This obviously is not the same game. It's obviously not the same scene. And the people got a whole lot meaner.
It's wearing a skin suit.
Yeah, it is. It is. But he's like, yeah, that's not D&D. TSR, that's not D&D. God.
D&D gets more diverse and has a larger audience every day. The more
I agree with that. I think that we could argue that D&D, because it's become more mainstream, it's attracted a lot of people affectionately referred to in the video game space as tourists, you know, but like, I mean, it was never something that excluded anyone. I mean, D&D was what you made it before, even going back to, you know, the basic set and going back to the player's handbooks. It was like, look, if this, and the Dungeon Masters guys, like, if this doesn't work for your group, then you change the rules to suit your group. You know, it was never, like you said, exclusionary.
The more diverse the game becomes, the more people of different genders and ethnic backgrounds and faiths see themselves in the game.
Right. But again, then why don't we have more ethnic diversity, gender diversity, et cetera, in positions where he's at? Where Cox is.
Well,
I mean, I think that's the fact that the guy in charge, his name's Cox, is very misogynistic, and I'm personally offended.
Yeah, right? Like, you've got a white dude named after a dick, literally.
I'm like, I mean, I'm just saying.
Definitely fucking
I'm
up
offended.
Hasbro.
Not really.
They go make their own versions of the game, and more players start to see themselves.
Wait. But wasn't it what they did before, where you'd start it and everybody kind of make their own versions of the game that would include their players?
Yeah. Now, I want to stop right there because illustrious leader Cock, it was on his watch that they decided to institute that OGL 1.1. So if you go create your own version of D&D, well, we own it. You got to pay us royalties. Right.
So if you do that, you know,
you better pay us. You know, bitches, you got to pay us. We'll take all the diverse monies from all the diverse people, except for Brazil. We hate Brazil. We're not going to release a Portuguese version.
He's
anymore.
a cock, so he'll just screw you all.
Represented in the game. The more diverse the creators get, the more diverse the players become.
But that's never.
And that's the way it should be.
Okay, so
but that's the way it was.
That's the way it was. I mean, there were a lot of women that worked on D&D back in the day. In fact,
that didn't happen.
Okay.
Because you know, these white dudes say so.
But Margaret Wise, I mean, she's been throwing shade at 5e for the last couple of years now. She's not real happy with Wizards. They actually had to go to court with them. I guess they dismissed the case or something. But like, there are a lot of women that were involved in the early days of D&D. They got completely stepped over.
Women did things before 2014.
I know, right?
And they had rights before 2014, and they broke glass ceilings before 2014. No,
I know, right?
The internet tells me that's not true.
I just can't believe that they're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the creation of D&D by talking about how problematic it is. Like, what the hell?
So this book is very interesting because I think it really highlights how far the audience has come.
So,
and
did they turn around and just like mock? They spent. I haven't seen the book, but does the book give an accurate depiction of what happened, or do they just use it to play up and mock? You know, focus on things that were problematic that might not have been a big deal in the original, but they're playing it up like it was to make it look like they've done more.
I don't know. I'm really
Anybody
tempted.
Read the book? Please tell us.
I'm really tempted to pick up a copy. It says that it's upcoming.
Oh, it's
I'm
upcoming.
really tempted.
Anybody
to pick
gets
up a
to
copy.
see the book and gets an early copy, let us know.
If they spend the entire book trashing Gary Gygax and trashing the audience that played at the beginning and trashing how, and talking about how problematic TSR was, that's not going to go over very well. I mean, I think the current year fans who just, download PDFs and the people who are complaining they can't even afford dice, a lot of those people.
Though, how much of the audience is that really, though? You know what I'm saying?
It's not a very large portion of it. I think most people always play D&D their way. They always had their own campaign worlds.
But if it was a large part of the audience, right? And you chased off the original audience, and then this is your new audience supporting you, then why do you have so much losses and why do you have to lay off people?
That's a damn good question. And they're saying this year it's going to be worse. And then how they reward these new players, how they reward them. Let's see. They hire AI artists.
They upcharge on the books.
They upcharge on the books. They pulled that OGL shit.
Yeah.
And now
Called the
they
Pinkertons on someone.
they called the Pinkertons on somebody who got the cards early. So I'm like, these aren't the good guys. Okay. I mean, we can argue whether or not old school D&D had some problems, but they're not the good guys.
And another thing, because it's not D&D, it's Magic, but weren't they going to landfills because they had too much and people weren't buying it?
I think I've heard a couple different stories. I heard one that Hasbro was dumping the stuff themselves. And the other version I heard was it was from like Target and stuff like that.
But either way, it doesn't change my point.
Yeah,
either way, they weren't selling.
It's not selling
there wasn't a demand for it. So they produced this based on what they thought was the demand. And then between the time they thought it was the demand, they produced these cards, demand went down, be it because people went back to work or because they just pissed a lot of people off and they, lost a lot of their audience. Chasing a new audience that isn't going to buy this stuff.
No,
I'm just saying.
No.
I'm like, either way, it doesn't matter which one. The point still stands.
Yeah, this is not a good look. This is not a good look to use the last couple minutes of this video talking about how D&D started to take the time to talk about its problematic past. Like, what the hell? Like, and look, if they want to throw a disclaimer on older books and say, look, these things were made back in the 70s and 80s. We don't necessarily feel this way now. Just to preemptively stave off any criticism, that's their business. They can do that. But to spend the 50th anniversary of D&D and talking about how unprogressive, barbaric it was. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, this would be like Bob Iger, which I could totally see him doing. Being out there and being like, oh yeah, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Disney, let's talk about what a freaking commie-hating fascist Walt Disney was.
Abigail does.
That's what Abby's doing.
And now that you have her writing letters to defend the board, that she was making fun of before.
It's not a good look. And I'm telling you, your best customers are probably your oldest customers that have been around for decades, buying your product, and you're basically like, yeah, that version of D&D that you grew up playing in the 70s and 80s, yeah, it's racist and misogynistic and homophobic, and thank God we've got better D&D now.
Like it's completely understandable that you add more diversity to it as it goes on.
It's gonna happen.
That's understandable. The problem is they don't make it additive. They have to subtract to put it in, and I'm like, it didn't have to be that way.
No,
that's what I don't understand. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be done in a way that it includes more people in an organic fashion, and they don't do that. And there's definitely no reason to be crapping on the original, how white it was by the white guy.
It's a zero-sum game, and this is how they do it in comics, and they do it in animation. They're never like, hey, let's add more chairs to the table. That makes sense. It's always like, no, let's take the chairs away from the stinky white guys. And then,
I always thought it was diverse because they have a lot of characters and stuff that were diverse and different. Obviously, it's a different world. There's different races of people. There's different classes, different groups, different whatever. It was always kind of diverse, but it's just like, these activist-y type people are like, well, I decided that's a stand-in for this, even if it wasn't. I decided this is that, even if it wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You're getting pissed about witches. You're getting pissed about really ridiculous, nitpicky, stupid things. Hell, even when you're talking about Matt Mercer, when they did that one game, that one girl was mad because it wasn't her flavor of Asian. I mean.
Oh yeah, it was. I forget what went down with that, but they had to. Okay, let me put this straight. Put it to you this way: they didn't have to apologize. They chose to apologize because they cultivated an audience of people that demanded it, and they got these players from like Tumblr and Twitter, and
this woman was mad because they tried to be diverse and make it like an Asian-based, like more an Asian-based thing, and then they were mad because they didn't include their version of being Asian.
They were mad because they didn't hire sensitivity readers to go over their stuff.
Yes.
Like they should have. They didn't hire Sweet Baby Ink.
The problem is when you make it more about, when you don't do it organically and you make it more about, you're doing this to choke out the white men who shouldn't be here, run by a dick. Anyway, I'm just saying, when you do this, you're not doing it in a way that's going to be sustainable. You're doing it in a way that's reactionary, and because it's reactionary, you bring in those group people that are going to constantly nitpick everything and be reactionary. And there's room for them to play, but you shouldn't make all your choices based on these people.
And on the other side of it, you literally throw kerosene on a fire that's already burning.
Right.
Like, you've already got a lot of old school nerds that feel like they're being pushed out of their hobbies, and then you go as a representative of one of these like core brands of nerddom, and you go out there and make comments like this.
So you encourage them to keep pushing people out. So you're literally encouraging a small group to alienate your larger audience. It doesn't make sense. Now, I mean, if there are people being complete dickheads and assholes, well, then I can see why people would be mad at them. But they're not even doing anything, and there's people they're getting all offended for no reason, and then they demand that they get like coffee shop and prom and
coffee
college.
shop prom adventures.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, which is fine. They're added if you don't have to play them. That's cool. But they're not just saying, okay, these are the ones I want to play. They're like, everything has to be what I want. And everybody else, you shouldn't be making anything that they want because they should be, starved of oxygen and being removed completely.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, D&D's for everyone except you. Right. Comics is for everyone except you.
And how they got in the first place is because they were welcomed in.
That's not what we meant.
Because you don't want to be, because you don't want to be exclusionary. So you welcome people in like, yeah, the more the merrier. I'm glad to have, more people to play with, different kinds of people are excited. And they get in there and their attitude isn't the more the merrier. Their attitude is, now that I'm in here, you all have to move so my friends can come in here. And I don't like you because I'm racist and misogynistic or whatever against you. So I want you removed to make room for my friends. And now we're going to put a bouncer at the door. None of you are allowed in except for people who have these check boxes. Meanwhile, they were invited and welcomed in by everybody else initially.
Can you pronounce Gygax? Yeah, we don't want you. Do you know who Gary Gygax is? We don't want you because we don't like him. He's a stinky man.
Do you think they'd like it because it would be like feminine? Do you think they'd like it for that reason?
Oh my God.
Like Cox.
Oh my God. All right. Let's continue. I can't believe that this is how they, no, you know what? No, I totally can believe it.
And how the game has changed over the 50 years, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
How it's played, who plays it, and how it's created. That's, in many ways, the way that it's created is the part that changed the least. Because a huge driver in early D&D was fan creations.
Okay, so let's God, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you are, by saying things like this, okay, you're, again, whether intentional or not intentional, you are alienating your core fandom. You're basically telling them that the game that they grew up playing wasn't any good. The current year game is the best version of the game, and that there were too many white men. You're giving people ammo.
I mean, he's right in the fact that a lot of it was fan created, but then, like you said. But that just further proves what you were saying, which was they didn't have things in there to keep people out.
No.
Like you could just change it however you wanted it to make it to what you wanted. So it was never problematic. And the fact that if you didn't like it that way, you change it to what you like. It was made to be that you can apply it, tailor it to your needs.
I remember our group and I think I told this story before, but not everybody listens to every video, thank God, because we've got like 5,000 videos out there. But I told a story in our group in junior high. We had a girl play who was she was like 5th or 6th grade and she wanted to play. So we taught her how to play, but she was like, I want trains in this world. I'm like, trains in D&D? That's weird. Back then it was because it was mostly medieval, but I'm like, okay, fine. We'll put some trains in. And we had to make some accommodations or whatever, but it was interesting because we wound up with, some pretty unique elements.
Wait, you didn't tell her she couldn't play because she was a girl?
She wanted to play. We thought it was cool. She wanted to play. I was like, all right, okay.
You didn't tell her that you didn't say, no, I'm not making any changes for you because you're a girl? And you didn't like shut the door in her face and say this isn't for girls because we're white dudes and you're not allowed to play?
No.
Well, someone's lying.
When I was in California, they're very diverse, and I'm talking early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. We had very diverse groups of people playing D&D at the comic shops, and nobody flinched. It was.
There were not white people playing?
There were lots of not white people.
Were there women playing?
There were women playing.
Were there not straight people playing?
I didn't ask, but probably.
Because you didn't care, because it didn't matter.
Given that I lived an hour from San Francisco, I'm guessing probably not straight people playing as well in the late 80s, early 90s. But, You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on, we're gonna respect the history of our product by taking a shit on what came before. And I'm like, I get that things change, everything changes. It's been 50 years, but to explicitly be like, yeah, it was so problematic. I'm like,
but I'm not understanding that, because it's like one breath they're saying it's problematic, and the next breath they're saying, but it never changed much. Fans have been creating their own stuff, but then doesn't that defeat the purpose of being problematic? I don't understand. Like, you could just step around it.
The very first set I got was that red box, the 1983 red box. That's how I learned how to play D&D. And one of the things that always stuck with me about that red box was they said the rules are basically a guideline. You are free to add house rules. You're free to change things up to suit your group. That's always been a core of D&D.
It was open. It was completely, customizable. Yeah. So there was nothing being exclusionary about it. But now it's so exclusionary, it's ridiculous.
You think if you're playing it, if you in your mind, for whatever reason, thought orcs were racist or whatever, you were always free to be like, yeah, I don't want to use orcs, or yeah, we're going to. But then what happened was we had these monsters become more humanized. And originally they weren't human. They were, just fodder for experience and gold, but then everybody kind of started humanizing the monsters.
I just blame the whole thing on Stranger Things, honestly. But
I think Critical Role, and again, no offense to Matt Mercer, but Critical Role attracted a lot of quote unquote tourists, I think.
Well, Will Wheaton showed up, and
Will Wheaton showed up. A lot of some of the Hollywood celebrity tabletop. Actually, I would argue that Critical Role knocked off Will Wheaton a little bit, because I think he had a tabletop show before Critical Role blew up. But I guess just people didn't want to listen to Wesley Crusher.
Shut up, Wesley.
Shut up, Wesley. We just saw that episode the other night.
I was like,
wait for it. I'm like, wait for it. Wait for it.
I'm like, what are you waiting for?
I'm like, wait for it. This is one of my favorite episodes. This data lore. I'm like, wait for it. Wait for it. There it is. There it is. Shut up, Wesley. All right. Anyway, let's go back. Let's go back.
Oh, there's more?
There's more. There's like a whole nother minute.
Oh, boy.
Still true today. And I find it very interesting and very exciting to see how the game has grown, how the audience has grown, how we as creators, as designers, have learned from the past, both what to do and what not to do. I think this book has a lot to teach us. But it's also just fun to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I might pick this up. I might pick this up because I'm really curious how they're going to present. If they're going to be fair, or if they're going to be like.
I think he's making some comments, but I don't think overall he's saying that's that.
Yeah, the guy interviewing him looks like.
I really don't. If I'm being honest with you, like, he's making some comments and he is doing something. They wouldn't pass our inclusionary standards today and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. That's who. So what? But most of what he's saying, I don't think is that bad.
Okay,
honestly.
so
I'm going to be honest with you, as someone who's outside looking in.
Here's my take on it. I think this is a guy who actually did grow up playing D&D. I think he knows the history of it. I think because of current year politics and expectations at Hasbro. Remember, this is the same Hasbro that their one marketing person was making guys like middle-aged guys at a G.I. Joe convention give their pronouns before they were allowed to ask a question of the designers, which is really fucking weird. Regardless of how you feel about it, it's really fucking weird.
You could tell they were weirded out, but they followed the rules. Because they wanted to ask questions.
It was
really weird.
But I think this is a guy who's like, yeah, I got to make this disclaimer because there's going to be people at Hasbro. They're going to be like, why didn't you make the diversity and inclusivity disclaimer at the whatever? I am curious. I might actually pick up this book because.
I'm surprised you haven't.
I don't think it's out yet.
It's not for pre-order because I'm surprised.
We'll see. I'm kind of curious if this is like the legit history of D&D or if this is like the Hasbro version of it. Like, oh yeah, there's this guy named Gary Gygax. But anyway, the real D&D started when Hasbro acquired Wizards of the Coast.
But how many people are left at Hasbro that were actually with the original?
I don't think anybody.
So then how do you... I don't know. I mean, you're not going to get a very...
I mean, they won't even give royalties. No, you're not going to get very fair
version of what happens. Yeah, you're right. They don't even give royalties to the people they're ripping off.
No, the reason that Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman have been so vocal about current year D&D is they got ripped off. You know?
Basically when Hasbro got it, all our deals are null and void. You're not getting any royalties.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, scamming people to begin with.
They're talking about Baldur's Gate doing so well. Fantastic. Did Ed Greenwood get a multi-million-dollar check for that because he created it? You know, they used his ideas in that game. Now, I don't think he got a cent. I could be wrong, but my understanding is the people that actually created D&D at TSR, the people who created the worlds that we all fell in love with, the people that created these worlds that actually transcended D&D and became books and animated series and movies. Those people aren't getting paid. They're not getting paid. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
But could you screw a bear?
Could you fuck a bear? Yeah, that's the question.
I mean, that's, if you could do that, then
you can do that.
Maybe they get paid more. I don't know.
It's just, I think the reason that they cover this is this just shows, this peels the curtain back and this shows where Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast is. Like, you can't even talk about the history of D&D without being like, oh, in our current year, inclusivity standards.
Right, you can't talk about it without dismissing it.
It's like, I think everybody gets it. If the thing's 40, 50 years old, it's, the movie's 80 years old. Everybody gets it. Well, except for Tumblr and Twitter people. And that's what they're like, okay, guys, don't cancel us, but we're going to talk about Oriental Adventures. And
but
it was a little
most
dicey.
people are just going to pirate it anyway. They aren't going to pay for it.
They're just going to pirate it
They're
anyway.
not going to pay for it.
Those PDFs are out there. You can download them. People are just making shit up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, we got to wrap this up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.